Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Shauna Harrison.
And I'm Dan Pugh. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. We live in a world of nuance. Instead of black and white, so much of our existence is gray. Do I vote for a candidate who has done horrible things but belongs to the party I identify with? Do I support a book series I love even though the author expresses hateful views? These are difficult questions, but sometimes the answer is obvious. Do I buy a Cybertruck? No. It's almost a relief when the choice is clear, and that's why it feels so good when a topic is cut and dried. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, cut and dried means, quote, already decided, settled or prepared, ready-made. Hence, in later use, clear cut and straightforward, end quote.
Okay.
Now, you might think of cut and dried and you think of plants and herbs, and you would be right. The practice of cutting and drying plants and herbs to make them last longer can be traced to ancient human civilizations. But the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, specifically notes it was tobacco. It was tobacco that really brought this phrase, ready, cut, and dried, into modern usage, as it was described tobacco leaves that had been shredded and dried and were now ready for sale.
Right. That's interesting. I feel like there are various idioms related to tobacco.
Right, yeah. So the Oxford English Dictionary notes this terminology was in use for tobacco by 1640, as found in some Scottish texts. Tobacco is said to have been introduced to the United Kingdom by Sir Walter Raleigh in 1586, though it is likely sailors already had access to it, so there would have been some tobacco in the United Kingdom prior to this. The history of tobacco in the UK is actually a really fascinating one, and it sent me down a massive bunny trail. So we're going to explore it in more depth in our behind the scenes video, which is available every Friday on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. For our purposes, as Shauna noted, there's a lot of things that come from tobacco. And so for our purposes, I just need you to know these historical points. Queen Elizabeth I was seen using tobacco in 1600, and from there it began to grow. In 1614, the first shipment of tobacco as a commercial crop arrived in England from the Jamestown colony in what is now the United States. And by the 1660s, when Charles II was reinstated to the throne, tobacco as a habit was commonplace in the United Kingdom. And that is where we begin to see our phrase being used in a more figurative way. So here's an example of this from the 1664 work, The Cause of the Innocent Pleaded, by Samuel Bradley. Quote, I saw their design plainly tending unto the same. When they did threaten to cut me off, I soberly answered, it was ready cut and dried. That is, it was ready done to their hands, end quote.
Okay.
You already know that clear cut or straightforward is how the phrase is used today, but as the OED notes, the phrase originally meant settled, ready, or already decided, and that's how it was being used by Mr. Bradley. He knew he was going to be cut off because they had already made up their minds. And so he simply acknowledged this by saying it was ready, cut, and dried, which is how the phrase was used to describe tobacco that had been readied, cut, and dried and was now available for sale. So that's where we get it. That's where it starts coming into that figurative use from the literal use of tobacco leaves, and we continue to see it used there. And then as we move a little more towards modern times, we'll start to see a shift where it starts to be used as clear cut or straightforward. Here's another example, and for this I have to read quite a bit of the title because it also acts as a synopsis.
Okay.
The Tragical History of Jetzer, or A Faithful Narrative of the Feigned Visions, Counterfeit Revelations, and False Miracles of the Dominican Fathers of the Convent of Bern in Switzerland to propagate their superstitions. The second edition.
Second edition.
So this is credited as being written by Johann Jetzer, or Johann Jetzer, through records of a Sir William Waller, and it was translated by the French by a, quote, impartial pen, end quote.
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know who did it, but whoever it was, they were saying they've translated it and they are an impartial observer.
I always Yeah, find that interesting because it's just somebody else is telling this story that they. Yeah, I don't know. I
Right. The
always wonder
translation,
how.
depending on how faithful a translation, could be the story people know, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just very interesting that sometimes people are like, "Oh, I didn't come up with a story," but basically this whole story is my fabrication now because of how horribly it was translated.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this version was published in 1680, and our phrase is found in the preface. Quote, "Our modern Catholics, 'tis true, have a Catholic answer ready cut and dried to all indictments drawn up against them." End quote.
Okay.
Yeah, apologetics at its finest, right?
Yeah.
So here's one that comes to us from a 1710 work called Mars Stripped of His Armor, and this appears to be by Edward Ward. Quote, "Thus he lives at discretion with his Reuters ready cut and dried against all emergencies, though a man would be apt to believe he has not much of that quantity who spends his life in drinking and whoring." End quote.
Well.
Yeah, Ed, if you don't want people to be like Mars, then maybe don't make it sound so cool with all the drinking and whoring. I mean, what are you on about?
Hey, yeah, people are going to be on board for that.
Yeah, if you like me were unsure of the word roister, I didn't know what it meant, so I had to look it up. And according to Merriam-Webster, it means, quote, "to engage in noisy revelry," end quote. And revelry is just noisy party making or merrymaking. So, frankly, this also sounds fun, Ed. So,
Yeah, I mean, why are we
stop.
down about
Why are we
this?
talking about Mars in a bad way? If he's ready, cut, and dried for partying
It's
and
like you basically said
drinking and whoring and
he's a
yeah,
rock
I mean, all right,
star. Like,
yeah.
it's
Like
like,
this is the thing. Like, don't if you don't want people to do sex, drugs, and rock and roll, don't make them sound so cool about doing sex, drugs, and rock and
yeah,
roll.
like, sorry, but that's what everybody
Oh my
wants.
goodness,
Most
yeah.
people.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people like the idea of that until you get into that, and then suddenly you're like, actually, you were right. This is not that fun.
Like, oh, this is exhausting. I really
I
enjoy
don't
this.
actually want to do that anymore.
I really enjoy this for a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, I'm glad to have done that and survived it, but I would
Right.
not do it again. Here's an example from the 1780 work, Ancient Greek and Roman Philosophy, Rhetoric, and Oratory. The book includes many older works, but since our phrase is in a footnote, it's going to be dated with this 1780 publication. The footnote is regarding certain types of oration. Quote, "These extempore orations were, as it should seem, a kind of public exercise, not unlike our college declamations, supposed to be spoken extempore, immediately after the subject was given out, of which the speakers had private notice, and consequently were prepared accordingly. Some with new speeches made by themselves, and others, like Timarchus, with old ones, ready cut and dried, which serves the occasion." End quote. So this is talking about speeches that would be made in the moment, but since they knew about it ahead of time, they could either prepare speeches or have some speeches ready cut and dried, ready to go.
Yeah. Which, I mean, so those are like opposites. If you didn't take, maybe if you didn't do some debate classes or forensics classes or something like that, then you wouldn't necessarily be familiar with extemporary style of speaking, but it literally is just in the moment. Like you don't have time to prepare. It's just like you
Right.
give a speech. When somebody calls your name and says, "Hey, give a speech," and it's like, no, why are you doing that? Nobody wants that.
Here's another example of the phrase from a dictionary in 1897 called the Century Dictionary Encyclopedia. Not encyclopedia, cyclopedia.
Okay.
It was edited by William Dwight Whitney and Benjamin Eli Smith. This is still using the older version of the phrase, quote, "cut and dried, prepared for use by cutting and seasoning as hewn timber, hence fixed or settled in advance, ready for use or operations at a moment's notice, as their plans were all cut and dried for the occasion." End quote.
Okay. I do find this interesting, the different, like the way this is used, and it makes sense that clear, like it, or it's ready to go, like it's already, ready to use or ready to apply.
Yeah, it's been
kind of
cut and
concept.
dried. It's ready to go.
Yeah.
So it's unclear when the phrase began to shift from all planned out, like you were just talking about, to clear cut or straightforward. Though to be fair, in many cases, the two definitions could be one and the same. So if
Right.
I'm saying that it is a straightforward, it's cut and dried, I could be saying it was all planned out, or I could be saying it's just clear cut. So it doesn't. It's not a far stretch to understand how you would have potentially gone from one to the next, and there'd been bleed over there, right?
Right.
So that last one was a dictionary in 1897. So we're gonna move to a few other places here where it could be using in different ways. This one I think is clearly using it as straightforward. So this is from 1924, and it's an article called "Not So Cut and Dried After All" in the Washington Daily News out of Washington D.C., USA. And this was the June 12th edition, 1924. Quote, "That's the reason why from out over the plains resentment is rising. It's the reason for the undercurrent and the reason the GOP campaign from 1924 is not so cut and dried after all." End quote. So he's using it. It's not so straightforward. It's not so clear cut, right? This is, I think, pretty clear. But in just 30 years, not even 30 years from the last usage, 25 really, from that dictionary one, we're seeing it in a more straightforward piece.
Right.
However, not so planned out would also work. And this is what I mean when I say there's some crossover here about clear cut and straightforward and, all planned out kind of thing. So there's definitely crossover there. Here's another example, and this one's about sports. It's also from the Washington Daily News. It's March 16th, 1937. It comes from an article called "Views Vary on Plan to Quit Center Jump." Here's a quote from Fred Mesmer, a local basketball coach in Georgetown. Quote, "Basketball without the tap is too cut and dried," he said. "That scramble for the ball when it's tapped, even though one center may be out jumping the other, is an interesting and important part of the game in my mind." End quote. So it
Okay.
feels like he's saying without that tip off to start the game, as we would call it now, without that, the game is just too straightforward, right? So
Yeah.
that gives you the opportunity where people it's part of the jump. You do there's a lot of things you could do to be able to figure out who's got the ball there. And they were talking about whether they should get rid of it. And he's saying that makes the game too straightforward.
Yeah, it's like, and I could see that almost having, it does kind of carry both meanings as you were talking about, where it's
Yeah,
like,
too
it's
planned
already
out. Yeah,
planned out. It's already, it's
right.
too
Yeah, you've planned it out in
predictable because
advance.
it's already determined. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'd put this as another example of the newer version, but there's definitely that crossover. So and in that case, I should know I'm not 100% sure if maybe the center jump was happening more frequently. Was it happening just at the beginning, or was in the version they were playing, were they doing it like after every score or something? I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
So there's a possibility that it was happening more frequently, but I couldn't understand from the context
Right.
how often it was happening. But obviously in basketball, both college and professional and high school, all of those, we still see it happening to start the game at least.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one more from the Evening Star, USA, and it's dated March 11th, 1951. It's from a story called Death Before Breakfast. This is the final courtroom style scene where the killer is just about to come to justice through the hero's big reveal. In this, the hero is addressing the killer, who pretended to be an eyewitness to the accident at hand. Quote, "Suddenly, there he was, the guy you'd sworn to get, the guy who'd stolen your girl. And he was blind. What a temptation. All you had to do was wait in ambush some morning when he came alone with the dog. With the excavation hole, it was a cinch. Blind man, left a few minutes without seeing eye dog, stumbles into pit. A cut and dried accident. And in due course, what was to stop you showing up out of the blue and courting his widow?" End quote.
Oh,
So in this one, cut and dried is being used as clear cut. It was meaning
yeah.
quite obviously an accident. But of course, the hero pulls out his wild card, and the bad guy gets busted, and justice is served, and the hero even adopts a dog. So, it's
Nice.
a wild story. The wild card here, by the way, is that the guy was only temporarily blind.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
even
he's like
more.
making
This
the
is
claim,
wild.
and the way they know that he was only temporarily blind is that he went with his wife to the ballet, and no man would go to the ballet if he couldn't see it.
Oh.
That was the but so like
Huh.
You
Okay.
wouldn't just go to the ballet because your wife wants to go to the ballet? Like, what?
I know. I'm like, well, that's kind of odd, but I guess. I
Yeah,
don't
so this
know.
is like, none of this story holds up. But, like, anyway, the point is, he pulls out some wild card and the bad guy's busted. So,
So
yeah,
funny.
anyway.
I
Why
don't
the
know.
wife doesn't keep the dog, I don't have any idea. Like, I don't even understand what's going on here.
Interesting.
But,
Like,
oh, my goodness. All right, 1951. What are you even up on? All right, so up next, we have several modern uses to cover, and we'll get to those right after we say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by our amazing patrons on Patreon, and it is 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community. So give our weekly discussions and poll questions a try. And if you love the content and want more of it, we have some paid tiers too if you have a few dollars to spare each month and want to support the show.
We have new things every weekday on the feeds. In addition to the conversation about what movies, shows, books, and podcasts everyone is enjoying, and our weekly poll questions, we also have early access to the week's podcast, all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode, and our lightly edited behind-the-scenes video featuring all of the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts that didn't make it into the podcast feed.
We've also got original digital artwork every month made by me and direct access to talk with us. No nefarious social media algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe and JGP do every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsey Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
All right, for some of our modern uses, we're going to start in 1989. Cut and Dried is a song by Jesus Jones. They are a British alt-rock band, probably best known for the hit Right Here, Right Now. Right here, right now, there is no other place I want to be. That one. Here are some of the lyrics from their song, Cut and Dried. Quote, "The thing that scares me most are the things that I know least about, like love and death and being alone, and some things I don't talk about. Baby says to me, be as happy as can be. She needs a little help from her friends. And she says, oh yes, but I still love you, and that's all very well, but where does it end? Cut and dried, I want to be like a machine inside. Cut and dried, I want to be like a machine inside." End quote.
wow.
Yeah.
Lyrics there.
Yeah, Jesus Jones is an interesting band name too, because they were apparently sitting on a beach in Spain, and there are three of the band members have Jones in their name in some way, and then they were talking to people on the beach, and a larger than what they expected number of them were named Jesus, so that's why they went with Jesus Jones. They just put those two things together.
I see. That's
They talked about
interesting.
Jesus Smith because Smith is such a common English last name.
Right.
But yeah,
of course,
they
the
all have Jones in
alliteration-
there, and it's also a common English last name. So
Yeah.
they thought Jesus Jones sounded better than Jesus Smith. So yeah.
And because of the alliteration, and it's got that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Cut and Dried is an episode of the Australian police procedural City Homicide. It ran for 5 seasons from 2007 to 2011. Cut and Dried is season 1, episode 12. Here's a synopsis from the episode available on Tubi. Quote, "The murder of a prison inmate exposes his hidden identity. Jennifer is cornered by a dangerous past acquaintance, and Simon struggles to cope with the aftermath of a deadly gold heist." End quote.
Oh.
Now, the thing I found really interesting about this procedural is that no actor was in every episode. The showrunners decided to work in the normal shifts into the episode, so if it was a character's day off, they weren't in the episode. I thought that was a really interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, I like that.
Cut and Dry is an electronica song by podcast music legend Kevin MacLeod. You'll find his work on tons of podcasts, YouTube shorts, TikToks, and other. So he's got over 2,000 pieces of royalty-free library music that's available for reuse under Creative Commons. The New York Times called him arguably the most prolific composer you've never heard of.
Yeah.
His work has been used in the Martin Scorsese film Hugo and is one of the live feeds on the International Space Station's Earth from Space. He even has a documentary about him called Royalty Free, the music of Kevin MacLeod.
I love that.
Yeah. So back to Cut and Dry. The YouTube page with the song, it's described as, quote, genre electronica, time 3 minutes 45 seconds, 122 beats per minute, allegro, pretty fast. Instruments, synths, percussion. Tags, aggressive, driving, grooving. Modern style production of a dance world music fusion, laser sharp, super compressed mix. Cut and dry. End quote. It's definitely catchy. If you're on TikTok, you've almost certainly heard his piece, Monkeys Spinning Monkeys, which has over 31.6 billion plays in a 6-month period in 2021. I've never even been on TikTok, and I've heard this song. So, like, it's obviously permeated. But you can find more about Kevin MacLeod's music through his website, incompetech.com. That's INCOMPETECH.com. We don't use any of Kevin's music. We've produced and made all of our music that we use for the show, but I know a lot of people that do, and so I don't mind throwing some good vibes Kevin's way. Cut and Dried is a 2016 book by C.A. Shilton. Here's the synopsis from the publisher. Quote, a violent man is found standing over a body, his knife protruding from the back of the corpse. An open and shut case, and an ideal first investigation for newly appointed Detective Inspector Sue Bishop. But Sue soon discovers that things may not be as obvious as they seem. As she battles to unravel the truth behind the murder, she also finds herself fighting for acceptance as a woman in a man's world of 1980s police service. She and her team eventually close in on the murderer, only to find themselves with a race against time if the key witness is not to become yet another victim. End quote. That's a good synopsis.
Yeah.
You didn't give too much away. You did just enough to tell me in, but you weren't you didn't give me too much. You didn't blather on. Well done. Well done. Cut and Dry by Charlotte Cornfield is a song off the 2023 album Could Have Done Anything. Here are some of the lyrics. Quote, I think I'm scared of you, but that's all in my head. Your messy hair, your day-old clothes, your unmade bed. I see myself in you, and that's the source of my dread. Even if sometimes I think you're overblown, I appreciate that you always pick up the phone, and you lift me up when I'm feeling alone. Honestly, I tried to cut ties, but now I know not everything is cut and dry, as I know that I still need you in my life. End quote.
Right. That one's also like, I feel like these are really good lyrics for all of these so far.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. I don't know if she wrote this about anyone particular, but I know that she worked with her brother on this particular song.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Cut and Dried by Moondoggie is a song off the 2016 album Around the Fire. It's kind of bluegrassy alt-rock song. Here are some of the lyrics. Quote, so you get stoned and you call it off. Your friends all call and you brush them off. It's nothing, but it must be something. It feels like whatever you do, you're always waiting. Calm down, my friend. It's not so cut and dry. That open door's still waiting on the other side. It's going to take some patience for you to recognize that everybody's on your side. End quote.
Interesting. Another one. I mean, these like are
I
some
know all of
deep
these lyrics
It's
are like bangers, like
like,
great.
wow, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I bet you could listen to the song and not really pay attention, and then you start listening to the lyrics, and you're going like, "Damn!"
I know exactly. I think part of that is why I like this phrase. There's something appealing about straightforwardness, probably because it's so rare. As a child, I was frequently accused of being an overthinker, yet I know plenty of true overthinkers, and I don't think that label fits me. What I do is ask a lot of questions about basic things. I want to understand fundamentals so I can make better decisions later. Understanding the basics doesn't make something more cut and dried. It builds a wider foundation from which to work, and that actually creates more options, not fewer. And more options are better in many aspects of my life. I appreciate when things are clear and there is a more straightforward path, but I appreciate even more that very few things are truly cut and dried. That's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It's poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, how do you feel about advertisements in podcasts? Almost 60% of you said you don't mind host-read ads, but you skip the pre-recorded commercials. The rest of you don't mind them if they are short or infrequent, and a small few are okay with them. After all, creators gotta eat. Mary said, quote, podcasts cost. I do prefer the ones that hosts read, but those can get really, really long. Either way, I respect the need for podcasters to engage quality advertisers to cover their costs in exchange for me getting great content. End quote.
Cheryl added, quote, I've checked things out based on ads. Usually they're US, so I try to find equivalent locally if it's something I want, end quote. Yeah, I don't have a problem with advertisements in shows. I do usually skip ads that are pre-roll or post-roll ads. In fact, there's some podcasts I listen to that have pre-roll ads so frequently. I just have it set so that the podcast starts at 32 seconds, into it or whatever, so that I don't have to. I do that also with shows that have long intros before they get to the actual content. Like My Brother and Me has a disclaimer and then a song, and then they start the show and it's the same time frame. So I literally just skip the first, whatever it is, 47 seconds or something, and then when I listen to it, it's right in there.
And some people like that familiarity and repetition.
Sure.
And
others...
Yeah,
I don't mind host read ads at all. So like if they're reading it live, if they are whatever they're doing as part of what their show, I'll listen to that. I don't skip through that because those can change even if they're just reading the thing. Oftentimes people will riff off each other or they'll riff off of something while they're talking about it, and I think that's fine. But the post roll ads, I'm almost never, even if it's for something I want to hear about, I'm almost never going to listen to it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if the ads are pre-recorded, they've got music playing behind them, I'm like, nope, never mind. You're taking me out of the podcast now. So, but anyway, I don't think I've ever bought anything from a podcast advertisement, but I have read or listened to books that were recommended by podcasters. So some of those may be native advertising, that they were being paid to talk about it, or they'd been sent a copy of it or something. But most of the time it's just, they read a good book and they're just sharing because it's a genuine recommendation. And I'm more likely by far to buy or engage with something like that if it's a genuine recommendation, But I think I have a built-in filter to take anything on an advertisement with more than just a grain of salt. Like I do not want to hear about it. So I don't know. And I don't know if I grew up watching a lot of TV. The TV was always on in my house. And that is likely why I have genuinely not sat down and watched a television, anything that wasn't a live sporting event in, I don't know, 2 decades. So, but like, I'm not a big fan of ads. I don't mind that they do it, and I don't mind that I have to skip it, but I'm not, I just don't do it.
Yeah, fair. To me, this is one of those complicated things because ads are just almost a reality of producing most podcasts, especially at a higher quality or for an extended period of time. They just cost money. I don't mind ads so much, particularly if they're minimal, or if they're tied or make sense for the show in some way, or if they're for the show or how to support the show. And like others said, those host-read ads are a little bit more palatable for me and sometimes enjoyable too.
Yeah, I do. I like to try and support shows on like Patreon, those platforms like that. So there's several shows I support there. That I think in my view, that's a better way for me to be able to support something. And obviously the only reason we can make this show Bunny Trails is because of our patrons. So you all are the only reason that we are still making the show, because otherwise we would have stopped making the show many years ago, probably before we hit 200 episodes.
And obviously like ads work. That's why we all keep doing them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I do, now that you say that, I should also say that we are not intending to start running ads. We are supported entirely by Patreon, so we are not going to be running ads. We do have our mid-roll that we do about the Patreon because we want to make sure we're giving name recognition to folks and make sure people know about it. But
and
that's it.
Have that extra content there that we try to, add some more to it. So
right, but yeah, we are not going to start running ads. If there are ever ads on our show, then it is your podcast app doing it, not us.
Not us.
So, and we did not consent to them. So.
All right. Well, if you want to take part in our silly polls, head over to the Patreon. We'd love to hear your take on our weekly poll questions, and it's free at patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember,
words belong to their users.